Okay. Alrighty. Get myself situated here. This is all kind of new to me. Well, newer. It's been a while. Make sure my phone's on silent and everything, so that doesn't bother us. Okay. I think everything's working. Okay. Well, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Amanda. How are you? How are you doing today? Oh, boy. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Sorry, man, I gotta stretch a little bit here. Oh. Oh. Oh, man. It's, let me see here. Yeah, let me know if, I'm getting alerts from YouTube talking about some connectivity thing or something. So if there's any issues, let me know. Twitch seems to be perfectly fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I woke up, I usually wake up around 8 o'clock, 8:30-ish. So about an hour and a half ago. But I was too excited, so I woke up super early. But yeah, if there's any problems with the stream, I don't know. I haven't streamed on YouTube before, but it's giving me alerts. I mean, it says things are okay, then it says things are not okay. So I don't know what's going on with that. Twitch seems to be perfectly fine. So I don't know. We'll find out. This is a good test run. Oh, well, welcome to UX Design Workshop. So I've streamed before, but never did a UX workshop before. So we're gonna see how this goes. Awesome. Okay, good. All right, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, it's just there's no way for me to know from this end. From this end, at least I don't know. I mean, obviously there probably is a way, but I'm just new to this. Yeah, it's streaming both, like on both of them at the same time. So whatever works best for you. And if YouTube's working, then that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, well, welcome to the workshop. So game plan today is we'll go through a UX design project. The goal is to do it from beginning to end, so that we can, cover the processes, pretty well. It's a lot easier to stream it than it is to record a video going from beginning to end, which is still in progress. But it's just, my job is just busy, so it's hard for me to pull the camera out and set up in this tiny So. This is probably a little bit easier. This is probably a little more helpful because people can ask questions. So yeah, we're going to try to do a project from beginning to end. Probably stream for about an hour, maybe a little bit more, depending. So we'll see how deep we can get into each step. We'll just do the best we can. Obviously, when we come to the user research and user interviews and stuff, we're obviously not going to do that. I'm not going to start calling a bunch of, going out and recruiting people. So we'll have to do some things in our imagination, but we'll go through, what the game plan would be, So, yeah, so we'll have fun with it. We'll keep it informative, but also keep it light, so it'll be enjoyable and hopefully it'll be helpful. So, let's see. So I'm trying to think I can't. So the YouTube app never like tells me. Well, maybe I'm just not. To be honest, I'm probably just not good with the YouTube app and stuff like that. So that could be why. Well, anyway, someone had suggested, what kind of project we do for the workshop here. Someone mentioned an app, so yeah, we'll do an app. From beginning to end. I wouldn't say we're gonna get. I can't imagine we'd be able to get too deep into it. Just because so take a really long time. So just maybe like a screen or two. So that we can cover the process as much as possible. Also gonna have a timer so that I can kind of like stay in, so we can stay within time so we cover as much as possible. So we're gonna design an app from beginning to end. Don't know how pretty it will look, but you know what? We're just gonna go for it. Oh, I'm glad, Amanda. I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah, that's yeah, that I'm gonna be honest with you. That is like my favorite part of the job, is recruiting participants, doing the interviews. Yeah, that is my absolute favorite part. So, I'm glad to hear that was helpful. I know it seems like there isn't a lot of information, very specific information online about that type of stuff, and so I think it was really important to put it out there, especially if you're someone who's just starting out. Like, people will hire companies to do it, but I'm like, you don't have to. A Google form or SurveyMonkey or whatever. It's like it's pretty simple, and so I'm glad that was helpful. That is probably the most important part of the entire process, because that's where you find the keys to success. The keys to success come from your users, and that's where you get them. You design based on that, and you can never guarantee success, but you can come very, very close to it. And so, my job, they just recently allowed me to do that. Before, they were kind of against the idea, but my team was doing so badly. I was like, can you just let me try? Like, just give me 1 week, I can do it. And they're like, okay. And oh my goodness, the results blew them away. They're like, we're going to do this every time. And I'm like, thank you. So now we're going to do better, so cool. All right, cool. So, yeah, that's enough of my rambling. Okay, so we're going to do an app. Anybody have any ideas for what type of app? Any suggestions for, what the app will do? It'll be fun to, I have one in mind, but it might be kind of fun to pick one from the audience. I'm gonna give. I don't know how delayed the chat is or anything. I know that can be a thing, so I'm gonna give it a couple minutes here. But yeah, if anyone has any ideas, what type of app or what would the app do? And we'll do that. Let me see. Yeah, let me see. Okay. I'm also getting used to this software. I don't know how all this software works. Okay. I wonder if there's like a chat. I wonder if I could turn. I don't know. There's definitely a delay, but I don't know how long it is. But let's say I'll just throw an idea out there. So let's say. Oh, excuse me. Let's say an app to watch anime. I like anime. Mostly one. I really just watch one anime. So let's say, an app to watch anime. So, in fact, let me, 15 and 20 seconds? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wonder if there's something I can do about that. Yeah, I'm gonna see if there's something I can do about that, if it's possible. In fact, let me switch to I'm switch to a smaller screen. No one needs to see my face right now. All right, so I got Figma open here, and here we go. And apologies if I I got you guys off to my right, but I can see chat right here, so I can see all of you. No worries, no worries. Yeah. So let me see. Like I said, I'm sorry. I'm getting used to this software too. Okay, so let me see how this works. Okay, so let's create. All right, so we'll put a timer for 10 minutes. How do I do this? Okay. Yeah, so give it about. Let me see. Am I able to keep? Sorry, give me 1 second. Still trying to figure this. Okay, there it is. Isn't there some way to keep this thing? Okay, there we go. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna restart it. Okay, so this is a good way I can stay on track. Is set a timer for myself. There's a timer in Figma, but it's more fun when it's interactive. Okay, so let's say it's a yeah. And let me know if you can't see the text, if the text is not big enough or anything. I'm gonna try to use as large text as possible. Okay, so it's an app to watch anime. All right. When I say app, I mean yeah. Well, you know what? We'll do 2 screens. We can do 2 screens. It's really not that bad. Okay, so it's an app to watch anime, right? So that's our idea. You know, at this stage, you might have. Hi, Catherine. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. So okay, so you know, we'll say it's an app to watch anime, right? So at this stage, you might already have some ideas for how the interface will look. Since I'm kind of doing this blind, I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into it. But you know, I mean, I've watched anime. You know, FigJam is probably not the best for this. You know, let me jump over to Figma. And I apologize. I use the dreaded whatchamacallit, Adobe XD at my job, and so it's been a while since I've used Figma. So at this point you might have like some sketch ideas in your head about how it would look, right? You know, you don't want to spend too much time. You don't want to become married to a design because you're going to do research, and you want that research to dictate, you know, how it's going to go. So you don't want to get like too, I mean, have as much fun, you know, have fun, but don't get too stuck on it. So of course there'd be an interface. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so used to XD. Oh, which is, I hate XD so much. So imagine this is the screen for, oh, wait a second. What am I doing? Let's see. There we go. See, this is how messed up I am. Okay, so we'll go on iPhone 13. I'm surprised I don't have iPhone 12, but I think the 13 is the same size as the 12. I think last time I did the research, 12 is the most commonly owned iPhone. So you know, we'll have that in mind. Okay, so let's say like this is the screen to watch the anime, right? There'll be a nice screen there. You know, there'll be controls down here, right? I don't have a... Yeah, apologize. Like I said, I'm kind of winging it, so I didn't come prepared. But usually I'd download an image that shows you where the thumb areas are. And so I'd kind of like make sure that the tools will go there. But like I said, just kind of like we're just kind of like freestyling it. So, you know, it may not be the prettiest, but whatever. You see here. You know, there might be a... I don't know why there would be a bar up here. I don't know. But in that case, let me think. The control areas would probably go here. Let me think here. What'd be really cool too is... Oh my goodness, yes, this would be awesome. So, obviously, I like to watch anime, but I like to listen to the Japanese voices because the voice actors for anime are so much better than the American actors. So, but obviously, I don't know what's being said, so it'd be awesome to have an area for subtitles. In this case, though, probably want to put it underneath the video. And again, this is like my idea. Research, you know, we're just coming up with an idea, you know. So we watch it there, you know, subtitles here, controls here. Probably even help because I'll end up forgetting. You know, just kind of, you know, just blocking it out. Ooh, that's too big. All right, so this is the video area. It's ugly, but it's still my baby, so I'm okay. And then, you know, controls down here. And I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but, you know, we'll get to it when we get to it. So we'll have a screen for watching video, and then before that screen, you know, there would be like the selection. So typically there's a navigation bar at the top. Let me see here. And then your... Let me see here. 100 by 100. Oh, hold on. Again, I'm used to XD. Okay, so 100. Let me think. Let me see. Am I a 3 by 3 guy? You couldn't fit 2 anyway, so it's fine. So, and then let's say this is like the selection. Grid-wise, I don't know, and there's something here maybe. I don't know. So we're just winging it. So, okay, so we'll put the label here so we remember what this is. I also type really fast and my fingers are way too big for my keyboard, so I will type stuff all the time, right? Okay, so let's say that we're like, okay, this is the idea that I have for the app, you know, this is, you know, just the idea I have, right? So we start the process by having an idea, and we're like, yeah, we even have an idea how it might look, kind of a thing, right? and that's fine. But like I said, we just don't want to get married and be really super attached to that design because we want it to be driven by, you know, users and their insight and what they really want. Because ultimately, whether your product succeeds or not completely depends on, we call them users, but you can call them customers. You know, I try not to get hooked on different terms and stuff. Customers, right? They determine, you know, whether it's going to be successful or not. So then their needs and insight should be the thing that drives it, right? And it's good to get them now rather than later where you have to redo this thing like 5 or 6 times. You know, it's a pretty simple concept, but it seems that it's very hard for companies to roll with it, right? Okay, so then let me see here. Okay, so we had an idea, right? Well, I got like another minute. We got another like minute and 30 something seconds on the clock. So we can. This is something I don't typically like to do this. I mean, there's nothing, again, there's nothing wrong with this either. So I'm going to look at like Netflix and try to think if there's anything I forgot. There's nothing wrong with like looking at other competitors and their work. But like I said, you just don't want to get, you definitely don't want to, and there's nothing even wrong with like imitating a lot of what they do, because people get used to a certain way things work, and that's just good UX. But like I said, you just don't want to get married to a certain designer idea. You want to make sure that you're still open-minded enough that you'll change, that you'd be willing to change. Oh, you know what? It would probably be really good too if, I don't know why I didn't think about this, but we need to have a what is that called? Horizontal. I'm sorry, man. It's so early. It's so early right now, and that's pretty much where the screen would be really big, and we'd have buttons, right? Yeah, I'm just trying to think of if there's anything that I'm forgetting. No, that's pretty simple. I think in my brain I was making it more complicated than it really is. Okay, so all right, so we spent about 10 minutes thinking about like what our idea could be. So now we want to start planning out our user research. Just start planning that out so we can start, getting that operation going. Let me see. Okay, we'll make this large because that's just good UX. Okay, so one thing we know that we're going to do is we're going to so if you can, it's the screener is a survey, so it's okay. All right, so we know that we need to find people, right, to talk to get this and I'm going to start the timer when we actually start working on it, so I don't take away I don't let my rambling steal time away from you guys. It's always best if you can. In fact, it's to be honest, I say it's essential. I've talked with people who don't think it's essential, but I can't imagine how it would not be essential. So, at least in terms of getting the best results, if you're self-taught and you're new, it's understandable that you may not want to do all of this work, but I recommend to everybody that I talk to, every person who's new, any person that I help mentor, just put yourself through the entire process. Like, put in the work. It will only make things easier for yourself later on, First off, you'll know how to do it, right? You'll have that experience. You'll be effective in your projects. And then most importantly, when you, especially as a self-taught person, and you're going for that job, but you don't have any real experience, when you're in that interview, you will speak with such authority and experience that they'll notice that, and in my case, that's exactly what it was. They told me, they said, you were one of the only people we talked to that it made it sound like you actually knew what you were talking about. That's not to toot my own horn at all. I'm just saying, when you put yourself through the experience, that's where you that's only going to help you. So I always recommend to everybody, and in my video when I talk about making 3 projects, to go through the entire process, go through the whole thing. So and that once you do it, I mean, then you're a UX designer, So the whole idea. In fact, you know what? I'm going to, for those that are new, I apologize. I forget that I'm not, that some may be brand new to this. So what user research is, we gather users to, we gather users to get their insights and what we call user needs. And then what we're going to eventually do is we use that for, and then we turn that into what we're going to build on top of, we're going to design based on. Because like we said, your customers, your users, whatever you like to call them, they're the ones that determine whether you're successful or not. If they hate your product, then you failed. If they love your product, then you were successful. So why not ask them what they want right from the get-go? So that's what the user research plan is. It's where you gather users so you can talk to them to gather their insight. So now the first step I always recommend is you have a screener survey. And there's some good articles on Nielsen Norman Group that talk about this. The point of the screener survey is to it's more or less it's to gather baseline data about your users, and it helps you to make sure that your data isn't like tilted in one direction. Right. So what you do is, you find a pool of people, and you're going to give them this survey, and the survey would tell you some things about them, so that you can decide if they're a good candidate for you to talk to, right? Because our product, again, is what? It's an app to watch anime. Well, what if they don't use their phones? It's probably that's not a future customer. So so it may not be helpful to talk to them. Let's say they don't like anime. Again, that's probably not a person that is going to be very helpful to you, because that's not your customer base, right? So, use a screener survey to determine, who are the right people. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm going to start the timer. 10 minutes. So we're going to take 10 minutes to do this. So let's think about, the questions that we would ask them, right? So we're always going to ask for the contact info, like name and email, so that way that you can reach them again. Because you're going to, if they're the right person, you're going to want to talk to them again. Let me see. And so we're going to find some information about them, right? And so, so now the question is like, okay, so, well, what questions do I ask? Well, it's an app, and it's an app about anime, right? So we're gonna ask a question, and so what we're trying to do is find out, their experience with it. So, it's an app, so it's mobile. So we're gonna ask them questions about, how long, mobile apps, right? First, we want to know how good are they with using a phone, right? So, because if they're bad with using a phone, then, and they say they hate your app, well, maybe they're just bad using phones, right? So, what you're looking for is, you don't want to ask them, so are you good with a phone? Because that's completely their opinion. You want to have like numbers, right? So we ask like, how often do you? And these, I'm sorry, these are going to be like not refined at all, because we're kind of just like going through it, right? But we're going to ask, how often do you use a mobile phone? Or maybe use mobile phone, mobile apps is probably better, because, talking on the phone is still using your phone, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here, right? So you'll ask, how many times a day? All right, that's a really favorite question. I think, do not quote me on this, but I believe the average person uses... Oh my goodness. How did I forget this? It's like 10 or 11. Yeah, it's like 10 to 11 apps a day. If, like I said, don't quote me on this, but I believe that's what it was because I just did user research and, for this, an app. And so this was one of the questions, right? Right. So, and so you might have as options, let me see here. So the options you might give them are like more than, well, to explain, right? Or let's see this. 10 to, let's see. Approximately 10 to 13 times a day. Right, so we know like that's our average, like our base, right? That's what the average person does, right? And so we'll say, and so then you also have a this is really bad. And I'll explain my reasoning here in a second. So what did I say? Like 10 to 13. We might, we'll make this 14, and we'll make it, yeah. Such a huge chump. I apologize. I don't like this already. I apologize. We're kind of freestyling it, but I'm hoping that you're getting the idea. 4 times. And you always want to have a. Okay, so these would probably be the options that I would give. Right, and I'll explain in a second. Right, so this is literally what I would put on the survey. So we know that this is the average, right? Right, and then it's like, okay, so anything above it would be like. Is there not a red? It is red. Okay, I think my monitor is just not super balanced. And then we'll make this blue. Okay. So what you all, so we want to know how good they are with a phone, where they are, right? Because like we said, one extreme is we're designing an app for anime. So if we got somebody that we talked to and they said, oh, you know what, I never use my phone. Can their input be helpful? Yeah, but you want to get but your customers are going to be people that use phones. So you're not going to really be designing it for them. Some of their insight can be helpful. It can, but you want to get as close to your real audience as possible. So if someone answers a survey and say sometimes never, they may not be the right person for you to talk to. That's something that you would kind of be able to figure out. If they say that, and anything above that, you can guess that's good. I can anybody who answers with one of these answers for how many mobile apps a day, that's cool. I can work with that, right? Because they're somebody that would be your future customer. Well, potentially your future customer. And so like we said, one extreme is never using your phone, but the other extreme is let's say they use their phones like all the time, right? Which is awesome, but that's not a typical thing. So people that use their phones all the time, I mean, they've seen it all. Like they know how things work, right? Even if something is not designed well, they may be able to figure it out just because they spend so much time using the phone. But the problem is anybody underneath them, the average person or someone who doesn't use the phone as much, won't be able to figure out stuff that they're able to because they're experts, right? And anyone below them would, if it's not designed well, may be turned off, because it's too complicated, right? So you will definitely take anybody who answers, these types of questions, but then you'll start to sort them, as you'll see, you'll start to sort them, into different categories so that you can balance your research well enough. Because you don't want to talk to only people that use their phones a lot, and you don't want to talk to people that only use their phones, sometimes, and you don't even want to just talk to people that only use their phones the average amount. You want to be able to have a nice spread, right? And so that's the reason why, and we'll talk about that more, right? Okay, so we would ask about mobile phone apps to get their experience on that, right? See, and I put 2 minutes for this, so I don't want to go past that, right? So you might have a couple more questions that you might ask. My YouTube video I made kind of actually talks about an electric vehicle app that I worked on for a project, and other questions I asked. So you might get some ideas from there. But right, okay, so you want to ask questions because it's an app for watching anime, right? In fact, no, I just want you to change this color. Does it change all of them? Okay, that's fine, Figma. I'm cool with that. Right, okay, so we asked a question about an app, right? So now we need to find out their experience with anime. So, I mean, just how often questions are really, really good questions, right? How often do you watch anime, right? And so for this, times a day. So now you need to ask yourself, okay, it's like asking somebody, like, how often do you go out to, like, eat at a fancy restaurant? Most people are not going to do it every single day, right? So then, maybe it's better to ask how many times a week. For this, I'm guessing probably times a week. Because also you don't want to be too broad and say, like, how many times a month? Because, but that's really, really broad and non-specific, right? That's not good for you to categorize, your users and participants, right? So you don't want to be too specific, but you don't want to be too general. So probably how many times a week is probably pretty good. Right? So it's definitely not. Oops, let's see. I'm just bringing this over here so I don't have to do it anymore. Okay, so this is something that you might do a search on the internet. In fact, let's do it right now. Give me 1 second here. And we'll add more time to the timer. Let me see. Let me see. So what I did was I looked up, average times a week that someone watches anime, and this is not helpful at all. Let me see. So there actually was like a study or something done. Let me see what it says here. The problem is I don't have really time to look at. Okay, this is not super helpful to me. Let me think here. Oh, nice. So they actually did this from a user's. In fact, I'll share this. I'll share this with you. So they actually, it looks like they did in Chicago. So they kind of did that whole categorizing thing like I talked about. What is number of series? Are they talking like, have I underestimated anime fans? I have definitely I call myself an anime fan. Clearly I'm not an anime fan. At least not in Chicago. Okay, I'm apologize. I can't read all this. Sorry guys. Like I said, we're winging it, so I didn't look up anything, beforehand. So let's just let's say that the average is like, oh my god, after reading that, I don't even know. You'd have to do research on this, but like say the average is like, and even then, I guess you couldn't say, like, it's not like a phone, like saying how many, I'd say how, let's say episodes a week. Can't say how many times do you watch anime. It's like, what do you mean how many times? It's like average. So let's say like let's say we did research and the average was like, oh my god, maybe it should be times a day. I don't know, man. Let's say average. I'm sorry, guys. I hope you. I'm just giving the gist. So let's say the average, like we did research, and the average is like 10 episodes, right? And also, too, you might not know, you might not be able to do research on this, and you might find out like an average from your people. So you might have to do a couple of screening surveys to find, like, you know, if they all say, oh, I watch more than 10 episodes a week, it's like, okay, maybe we need to make the scale a little bit, you know, change the scale a little bit, right? And that's perfectly fine. So I'll say more than 10, approximately, what did I say? I said 10 was the average. Let's say 5 to 9, and then look at that. I even kept, you know, there. Sometimes never. And then it's also it's very important also that you use the word typically in your questions, because that's the other thing too. If your survey, in fact, I'm going to start the timer again here. We'll give another 10 minutes. So, and yeah, you want to use the word typically in your survey questions. So, you know, how often do you use mobile phone apps? You know, how often do you use mobile phone apps in a day? The problem is like people's habits change every single day, right? It's going to change every single day. And so the question, if it's confusing to them, they may not answer. They may either get confused or they're not going to answer accurately, right? Now, they're not going to be perfectly on spot, but that's not what you're looking for. You're just trying to gauge like an idea, right? So use the word typical in there. And so when they see it, they're like, oh, okay, not like literally like every time, just like, you know, usually, right? So adding the word typically is a huge help, and makes it so it's not nearly confusing for them, and your data will be, you know, largely more accurate. Okay, so we asked this question. Okay, how typically do you watch anime? Like how many episodes a week, right? And so same exact deal. You'd find out, okay, who's the average, you know, anime user, who's like the super anime, you know, watcher, who's the we call them inexperienced, you know, anime watcher, you know. And again, anybody who says, you know what, I don't watch anime. Oh my goodness, my dog is barking. I'm sorry. Let me see. Is it? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm going to close the door. I'm sorry. 1 second. Oh, this dog. Maya, please. Hi, Zoe. Hello. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My dog is like, she's obsessed with like barking at absolutely nothing. And then, like I said, anybody who answers, "Oh, I don't watch anime," okay, then you're definitely not. You're not. You know, like I said, it's not that they couldn't offer some advice like on apps in general, but again, they're not your target audience, so you don't want to design for them if they're not going to be your target audience. Like I said, your customers, your users, they determine your success. If they're not your user, then then they have no bearing on your success. So it's not, you know, it can be helpful, but it's, you know, generally not. Okay, and so eventually. So like I said, there might be other questions you might ask, you know, to add a little bit more. But I hope you get, you know, the basic idea here. But the point is, you know, these screening surveys allows it so that you have, you know, that you don't get you don't end up having like the same type of person, right? So yeah, this is no good if it's white. Grayish? Sorry, guys. I haven't worked in FigJam in such a long time, too. It's so nice to be back in it, but I'm new to it, right? So, so like I said, you might have someone who uses, you know, Someone, great is not. It's not exactly the. I could have. Isn't there like I'm sorry, guys. You know what? This is why I use sticky notes all the time. That's why. Right. So let's say that you get a bunch of people that are like these, bunch of people are like, oh man, I use my phone so much, like a ridiculous amount of times I use my phone, and they watch a tremendous amount of anime. But if you get, like all your people that you poll are like that, the problem is like you're going to design based on these people, but all these people, they're left out of the equation, and you don't want them to be. So you want to have like a good balance, right? Ultimately, the app part is not like the app part is just there to tell you, if they're good with a phone or not. If they're, so generally, it would be great to have, your people that, anybody who, probably like in this range here, so that way that their experience with phones. So if they express a problem with the app, it won't because they're not good with phones. It'll be because of the app. The stuff that we did, the stuff that we have control over, right? So you'd want to, so to be honest with you, even if it ended up like this, where you had like 2 people that use phones a ton and only like 1 person that used, the average number, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as because as long as you get this kind of mix. That this is a little more important. Having a mix of the different anime watchers is probably a little bit more important, because your product isn't designed for all mobile users. It's designed for anime watchers. So like I said, when you start doing this, it'll make more sense. It'll start to make more sense. Start doing this, like, what type of people you want, right? So so let's say, let me see here. So generally, how many do you want? So you'll hear that 5 is a very good number. 5 is the magic number. Nielsen Norman Group did tons of research on this, and they found that 5, is a good number. They have a very good article about that. But you have to, and I've talked with other designers on my team, actually. Well, not my team, but like same company I work, just different team. And they always insist on having just 5. But if you read that article, it doesn't say like you only need to have 5. It kind of depends. So 5 is a good number. So the reason why 5 is a good number is because after they found statistically, after 5 people end up saying the same exact things over and over again, right? So there's no point in testing 10 people if they're all going to say, they're going to all repeat themselves. You only need 5 to find, statistically it's like 85% of problems are what you need, right? But the exception to that is, and for this example, I think it's perfectly fine. But the exception to that is, I'll give you an example where, my job, the app that I'm working on, is I'm designing the app for people in my company to use. So it's not like for the public, it's for people in my company. And what we have is we have 2 groups of people. We have office workers, and we have people that work like out in the field. Right? So we have people that just stay at a computer all day, and then we have people that work outside, right? They're very distinct from each other, right? And I gotta and their needs are completely different from each other. So I wouldn't just do like 5, because just nonchalant 5, right? Because if I were to, it's like, well, no matter what happens, one group is going to be outweighed by the others, right? And because they're so very, very different, that means that I could get it right for these people, but get it wrong for these people. So instead, in that kind of case, you want to balance it out. In fact, it's in the article. It says, then do do 3 of each group, right? So that's something you want to consider is, the group of people you're designing for, are there any like really distinct groups where they're like very different from each other? And so you just want to make sure that, all your research is balanced. So that's something you want to keep in mind. In this case, I can't, it's an app to watch anime, so that's not really a problem. So here's what I would, if I'm getting 5 people, here's what I would like. I'd want to get people that, let me group these. Yeah, so here's the spread I would love to have. So I always like to have a super user, if I can, right? Because, and I'll explain in a second. I like to have somebody who we might call, that we would call an inexperienced user. So let me see, someone who watches, who I say like maybe a casual watcher of anime, right? Timer went out. Whatever. I'll start the timer again in a second. So I definitely want to get somebody who is a casual watcher of anime, right? But of course they got to be decent with their phones, right? So I'd say, they don't necessarily have to be an average user of phones, but I would love to have somebody like this. Let me think here. Yeah, I would love to have someone like this on the low end. Okay? And in the middle, I would love to have a group like, this. And again, I'm freestyling. We're freestyling today, so I'm not putting a whole lot of thought in this. I'm kind of just like winging it. Oh, no, that's not at all the right key. Let me see here. So 5, right? Another one of these would be really, really nice, right? Right. So here's the spread that I would love to find, after doing my, after my screening, right? Then here's why. These are what you call your real users. Okay. These are like your real customers. Your customer base is going to be the majority these people, right? So if you imagine that we're charging $10, I mean, I'm just throwing out numbers, like $10, right? Each person charges $10. You're going to get more money grabbing these people, right? These are the people that are more likely to pay for it, right? So these are your real users, your average users, right? And so you want to design especially for this group here, okay? Because again, they're the ones that will determine your success the most. And so in that way, when we do the interviews and we collect, their thoughts are especially important to us. Anytime they have the same thought, and we'll go over this, anytime they have the same thought, like we want to think of that as gold. Why I also want somebody on the low end is people on the low end, or what we call inexperienced or casual. Their thing is they're like, you know what, I'm not really used to this. It takes some, like, it's tough. It like they want to get into it, but they're not really sure how to do it, right? So the point is for these people, because they do it average number of times, they know how it works, right? This person doesn't know how it works, right? They need things to be a little bit easier. Well, anything that these people say, this individual says, I'll keep in mind. I'm like, okay, when they talk about things that are outside of what these ones talk about, those are like, it's like, okay, those are the things that you can do to make it easier, or to attract, to put it in business sense, to attract new customers, right? Because this person is a new customer. So you find out, okay, what do you need? And that will help you, and this person has the insight to attract new customers. This person has the insight to help you, like, keep your customers happy. And this person over here, this person who, man, they're crazy about anime, and man, they use, their phones a lot, right? It would be perfectly fine if, like I said, since an app to watch anime, an anime super user would be more helpful than somebody who also uses their phone a lot. But man, if I could find someone on the extreme, right? Someone who's really good with phones, right? And has also thing is, because they use their phones a lot, they have a lot of really good ideas, right? They've seen a lot of things, right? They know what works and doesn't work because they do it all the time, right? And so they have really good mobile knowledge, and then they also have really good, like, anime watching knowledge. So this is like where you would get an ideas for, like, your advanced features, right? So when you get a nice spread like this person here tells you how to attract, like I said, in business sense. I don't like to think in business sense, right? But in business terms, this person tells you how to attract new customers, how to get them into it. This tells you how to keep those customers and make them happy. And this person, these tell you, like, what is really essential. I'll put it that way. The things that are absolutely must be done, like, right away if you want to succeed. And this person can add a roadmap for you on where to take it to keep being successful. So, you get a nice spread, right? And again, that's only possible if you do these screener surveys, right? Because you gotta be able to categorize them. If you don't do this, and you just go straight to interviews, you have no clue of who you're talking to. You could be talking to nothing but these individuals, and, like, you design based on this, and then all these people are like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, these people are confused, and this person will never become a customer because it's so complicated and too crazy, right? And you keep in mind too that when these people are, they become used to, they have a good user experience, they can eventually become average users, right? And so you keep adding, so that's the whole idea. Navesh, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Okay, so that's the screener survey, right? Okay, so let me start oh my goodness. Good, man. Good to see you. Oh, hold on a second. I lost my timer here. Can use this software. Okay. Is that working? Okay. Okay, so what we would literally do is you would find a group of people. You'd give them this survey. Again, there'd probably be more questions than this, but you don't want to have many questions because then otherwise they're not going to take it, right? So you'd give them the survey. You would, sort them, by this. And then the ones that, when you find the spread that you want, then you would go back and contact them to set up for an interview. All right. And so the interview is where, this is where the incredible stuff happens. This is where all the gold comes from. Sorry, my dog is going nuts right now. All right. And so the biggest reason why interviews are just so amazing is, and once you start doing them yourself, guys, that's when, oh my God, it's what made me fall in love with UI UX design. Oh my goodness, it's like magic. I can't believe it. It's like magic. I have 2 interviews I got to do today. I'm so looking forward to it. It's so much fun. I enjoy it so much. So this is where you talk to them one-on-one. Surveys can only they can only answer in these different ways, right? People will say things that they just say things, man. They'll say what's important to them, right? And because you didn't ask the question, you know it's like legit, and it's very, very important. So, man, dude, yeah, interviews are absolutely incredible, right? So the nice thing is, if we've done our screener survey, we've kind of already started a script for doing interviews. Now in my YouTube video, I talk about, starting with an interview script and then going to the screener. That's completely up to you. I do it that way just because there's been plenty of times where I've started to write a survey first and I put it out there. And then I realize after I'm writing the interview script that I missed, that there were some questions I should have asked about. So it's really not that huge of a deal, but I like to do the interview script first. Now that can sound really intimidating. You're like, oh my goodness, how do I write an interview script? The nice thing is, it's kind of, we're following the same idea of our survey here. I got a hand. Oh, look at that. See, I can. Oh, that's cool. So it's a similar idea, right? So, and the thing is, the questions are really, really easy to ask, because they're meant to be very open-ended. Because the more open-ended they are, the better chance that you're going to get good information. I should probably talk about that really quick. So the thing with interviews, though, is that you can do them wrong. It is possible to screw it up. And it's because you have what's called biased versus unbiased information, right? We want unbiased information. This is where, if possible, they say it completely of their own volition. We did not lead them to say something. And that way we know it's honest and it's how they really feel. That's the key. We want to know how they really, really feel about things. Not how they think they feel about things, but how they actually feel about it. I'll give you a good example. When I was doing the electric vehicle app for my project, I interviewed a Tesla owner, right? And when I went to talk to him, he was very he had a lot of bad things to say about Elon Musk and stuff like that, which is perfectly fine. That's no problem with me. I don't care one way or another, right? So you might think, okay, man, he must really hate his app, right? He must really hate it because he's got nothing but bad things to say. But when I start asking him questions about the app, even though he was still kind of gruffy, asked about his experience with the app, he had nothing but fantastic things to say. So that's why it's important to ask him in such a way that they're telling you what it's really like, rather than like how they feel about something, because they can be misleading. And that's human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just for our purposes, we're trying to get really good research. So, we need to do it right. An example of biased information is saying a question like, oh my goodness. Well, let's say we're in the context of like an anime app, right? To be honest, I doubt anyone would actually ask this, but don't you hate the way that, anime apps do this, or this? That's, like I said, it's an extreme example, but it's like, you just led them to say something negative. They may say something that they don't actually mean, right? So, you can't ask questions like that. Or at the very least, you don't want to ask them right in the beginning, because it kind of muddies the waters. Because once you lead their mind in a direction, you kind of like, they're going to continue in that direction. So, the point is, we want them to say it completely of their own volition, completely on their own, and that way know it's legit. It sounds complicated. It really isn't. So, to give you an example, really, really simple. The best questions that I've found, and in my opinion, start with, tell me about. And the reason why this is so amazing is because the question requires an answer. It doesn't the question just requires them to tell you, their experience, how they really feel about things. There's no room to lead them on or anything. They're just going to tell you about something, right? So for example, for this, you know, I might ask some questions about, you know, I might mirror my survey a little bit, right? So I might ask a question about mobile apps. You know, tell me about, right? Now this, of course, is not like, this isn't what we really want to, like, this is where you ask the questions that, you know, that at this point, as you're like getting through this, you're having ideas for your app and you're like, okay, you know, and you have specific ideas about things you have questions like, for example, how do they feel about subtitles, right? What kind of controls, you know, would they want, right? I mean, you have play, obviously you have fast forward, rewind, you know, is that something they want? We have like the go back 10 seconds, go forward 10 seconds. Okay, maybe it should be 5, maybe it should be 15, I don't know, right? How do they feel about, resolution, right? Those are all questions that you need to know the answer to, right? Because you're going to design this app. So that's like the stuff, that's the good stuff that you're going to learn from, right? But sometimes, and it's completely up to you. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. I'll kind of ask them about this again, and I'll ask them about this again, just to make sure that I categorize them properly. Julian, yeah, I'm glad, man. Thank you, Julian. I'm glad this is helpful. So in the interview, sometimes I will ask, just to reiterate again, because sometimes, you know what, maybe they didn't answer the survey correctly, or maybe they misunderstood it. That's completely up to you. You'll kind of just know, and trust yourself, man. If you did it the right way and you got a good spread like this, you're in like you're on the right path, right? And can you go wrong? Yeah, but not in big ways. Once you've done this work, you're doing really, really good. Okay, so I might ask, so tell me about, mobile app, your experience with mobile apps. And they're just going to talk about mobile apps and stuff like that, right? And I'm going to hope, let's say I'm talking to, I'll use an extreme example. Let's say I'm interviewing this person right now, right? So I'm hoping that his answers are going to match up with what he said on the survey, right? When I ask him, okay, tell me about your experience with anime, right? I'm hoping that his answers are going to match up with this. I guarantee, I'm quite sure he's going to list off every anime that he loves, right? which is perfectly fine. But I'm only going to ask one question because, again, these are not important. Like we're past it. Like we asked these questions to categorize them. So I'm just going to ask them one question. It's also good to get them to feel comfortable. And it's fine. I'll figure out the timer in a second. It takes people time to warm up for interviews. So asking questions like this, especially something they would love to talk about, helps them kind of open up. So sometimes it's good to just ask some, kind of softball questions, right? And again, you don't want to hold them too long, so hopefully they don't talk too much. But then again, they may end up saying stuff that and if you tell them ahead of time, yeah, so we're designing an app for like watching anime. It's up to you whether you want to tell them ahead of time what the project is on. There's like two different thoughts on letting them know ahead of time. Completely up to you. You'll kind of just know. But if they know the topic, they may just start talking about it, man. Which you're like, awesome. I'm already recording. Anything. And again, you didn't ask them about it. Like if they say, you ask them about anime, and they say, oh man, I really hate this about, oh man, I really wish they had subtitles in this app. You didn't even ask them about it, but they said it, which tells you like that's a pretty good insight. That's an unbiased insight. That's gold, man, right? Because they did not say it. Okay, so I said I'm gonna try to stop rambling here. I apologize. Okay. So let's get into like the questions, like the really meat of the questions, right? So, so I'll start by saying, tell me about the last time you watched, see. So let me think. So the question is, do you want to tell them about the last time they watched anime or last time they watched anime on a mobile phone? It's probably, you know what, it's probably very good to start out general. So it's what's called the funnel effect. There's a really good article on Nielsen Norman Group about it. It's where you start with broad questions and you get more specific. And like I said, the reason for that is because your broad questions will get unbiased answers, and then as you answer more specifically, they could start to become biased. But the point is, and that's fine. Hey, Femi, welcome to the stream. And so the point is, like, you'll kind of know if an answer is biased or not. You just don't want to answer it in the beginning, because then they're on that mind track, and then everything they say may be tainted, right? So you start out as general as possible, and you get more specific, right? So tell me about the last time you watched anime, right? Just anime in general. And so they're just going to tell you. They may even say, like, TV, or like, do you mean on TV or a mobile app? And you say, yeah, whenever. And so what the odds are, what they're going to tell you is things that they're going to start telling you, things that they liked and disliked, right? Which is pure gold. They're just going to be like, oh, I like this and I like that, or they probably tell you about the animes they watch, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. And then let me think here. And then you're going to tell me about the last time you watched anime on your phone. So here's another question. Like, is it going to be on iPad and phone, or is it just phone? Well, I mean, I think those are two different things, right? So you might want to hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Apologies. So you might ask about, okay, tell me about the last time you watched anime on your iPad or on your tablet, right? If it's going to be on both, so you'd ask. But let's say for our intents and purposes, like, this is just a in fact, let me start the timer here. Let's just say, for all intents and purposes, like, this is just for a phone. Okay, so we're just going to say this is just for a phone, right? So I said, okay, tell me about the last time you watched anime on your phone, right? You just ask that question and you just let them talk, right? Oh, no worries, Femi. No worries. I think this will be posted on the channel, so you'll be able to go back and watch it. But no worries. So yeah, you'll ask, when's the last time you watched anime on your phone? And they're gonna say stuff, right? They're gonna say stuff they liked, right? And then we start to funnel in. We start to get more specific. So then you say, tell me about. Let me see. I'm trying to think of a word for workflow. That's not workflow. Tell me about the process. Yeah, because I don't want to waste too much time thinking too specifically. So, obviously, at this point, you're asking questions so you know what to design based on, right? We have these ideas, and so now we need to get some, like, really serious answers, right? So there's some things. So obviously, the things that you're going to be worried about is, the process and the workflow, right? Like, how should it work? Like, what's the process, right? And then also you're going to want to know about, the design, right? I mean, that's pretty much an app. It's like the workflow and then the design, which is how things look, right? So you'll say, okay, so tell me about the process or workflow. And then you're also going to ask, tell me about the design. And so you're hoping that on this first question that they'll cover everything that you have questions about, right? But if they don't, then you go on to ask these specific questions. So, like, choose an anime. Let me see. And again, like I said, we're winging it here today, so forgive me if my thoughts are not, like, super well focused to this project. Like, the process of choosing anime, the process of subscribing, a subscription thing, right? The process of, if anyone has any ideas, feel to throw them out in the chat. Let me see. Like, stuff like that. The different processes that go into an app, right? Say, okay, tell me about the design of it. Okay, and they're like, oh, like, if they say, oh, what do you mean? Like, oh, like the design of the buttons and the design where things go. Like, tell me about that. they'll tell you. You say, okay, so, and if they don't mention, like, okay, tell me about the design of the video player, for lack of a better word, right? Okay, so tell me about the design of the video player. Decision making. Yeah. Yeah, let me see. Tell me about the process for making a for, I don't know, whatever. Right, we know what we're talking about. Right, so tell me about the design of the video player. Tell me about the controls and the buttons, right? Tell me about the features, right? And so this kind of goes underneath the video player, right? So beforehand we would think about, what types of like we did that already, right? For our like app ID, we're like, okay, there'll be like a home screen, right? For choosing, we're only going to do 2 screens, and then there's like a thing for watching video, right? So we'd ask questions about, okay, tell me about the design of the video player, tell me about the design of the home screen. To be honest, that would probably go first. Just to try to go in some type of, I don't know how to explain it. You want to group their questions. So let me see here. Amanda, very good question. Are there any questions like tell me about that you gravitate towards for interviews? To be honest, like so I try to start with as many tell me abouts as possible. And it's just because, like I said, the phrase tell me about it requires them to return an experience. Like, I'm not saying, give me your opinion on this. Like, I'm not asking for their opinion. I'm like, tell me about a time when you did this. Tell me about this. Tell me about this. Like, there is no possible way that I could lead them on unless I, led them, made a really bad question. But pretty much it all determines, when I get to the interview process, my thing is I'm like, okay, what stuff do I need to know so I can move forward, right? And I just think about, okay, what are the design decisions I got to make for this app? And odds are, you've been already designing it, so you already have in mind what your what some of those things are, right? And you'll know what things you are completely clueless on. And even then, the things, like I said, even if we already have an idea, we still want to ask questions, about them, because you know what? It could be, you're like, well, this company doesn't, they seem to be successful. And that might be true, but they're also doing things that are wrong. And so you want to copy their, if you want to do what they're doing right, but you want to stop doing what they're doing wrong. And so that's why you ask these questions. But yeah, so tell me about, I pretty much start every question with tell me about, just because it's so good. It really helps me to get the right stuff. But there are some other questions I ask. So it's tell me about the home screen. Right. And so something else, so I'll probably put this in there too, right? And so, more general, and then I will eventually, and so then at the end I will ask them, tell me about its flaws. Oh yeah, Femi, of course. Yeah, I do remember your message. Yeah. Welcome. I'm hoping this stream will be helpful. We're going to try to go through the whole process, so this will build it out, pretty good. And you can always email me too if you have any specific questions. I'm more than happy to answer. So hopefully this is at least a decent primer, right? So I'll tell me about its its strengths. Oh my God! Like I said, guys, I'm just. Can I not spell today? Okay. Tell me about its strengths and its flaws. Tell me about, I might ask you improve it, right? So now, as you notice. So now these questions are starting to get more specific, right? And you could say leading, because now I'm like, okay, I want you to tell me about his flaws and his strengths, right? These other questions are completely unbiased, right? Anything they say and answer this question I know is like for real, and also like really important to them, because people will say what's really important to them. But as I start to like funnel it down, well, now I'm starting to get a little more specific. Which again, these questions are still not, they're not like directly leading, but they could be, because they're getting more specific. But again, the point is that's like, well, as long as I don't start with this question, we're good, because I already got the unbiased stuff, and I guarantee you they're gonna say things about how, like ways that you could be improved and stuff. They're gonna say it, but it's good to just ask this question more as a like to clean it up, to be like, okay, is there anything else that you would do to improve it? Just to make sure you get all of their ideas. You just keep in mind that any answers they give to these questions may be biased, right? And you just keep that in mind, and you just give the appropriate weight to it, right? So, let me see here. And then one question I like to ask too at the end is, and I do like to ask this question at the end. Is there anything that you feel is important for me to know? Would be important for me to know? Like, my English is not good today. And that's because, you know what? Oh, no worries, Stephanie. No worries. Yeah, no worries. Like, this'll be posted on the channel, so you'll be able to see it. And so yeah, I like to ask this question at the end. And that's because, you know what, a good, we do want them to go off track. We do want them to be honest and just say whatever comes to their mind. We don't want to focus their thoughts unnecessarily. We want them to be unbiased. But you know what? But sometimes they're really good interviewers, and they'll stay on topic, really well. And you know what? Maybe there's something they really want you to know that, we just didn't give them an opportunity to say. So you know what? This is a good time to catch it. To just get it, whatever's left, So, so again, there's probably, there might be more specific things I would ask, but like I said, it's really not that difficult, using tell me about statements. Like I said, the less specific the questions are, the better your results are going to be, right? And so that's what we would do. We would contact, we found our spread. We found these 5 people. We put them through the interview, right? And then what we do is we start to collect everything that they say, right? Excuse me. So yeah, then we start to collect everything that they say. And that's where we start to cross-reference a few things. So let me see. So let's give an example here. And that's where you keep in mind, like, who said it, right? So let's say that this sticky note is, this is our inexperienced user. Green will be our average users, of which we have 3. And then, red sticky notes will be everything this person said. And also, too, keep in mind, you want them to stay completely anonymous. It just, trust me, it works better that way. Even in the company I work for, when I'm doing user testing, and the users are actual, like, employees of the company. So, everybody knows who everybody is. But even their participation is completely anonymous. And it's because things get really, especially in that situation, things get really weird. It just, people will like take offense, to what, if they know what people are saying. Some people take offense to things. Some people will be like, I think that guy, I think that guy is wrong, kind of a thing. So, when I share my findings with my managers and stuff like that, they have no idea who said what, and they have no clue. And I made that clear to them. I said they have to be completely anonymous, you know. And they're like, oh, that's fine, but like they have no clue of who said what, you know. And that also helps you. That also helps you too, because then you won't have any bias. I mean, odds are you're not going to, because you're like, you understand how important this is, and so you're not going to like sabotage yourself. But it's very important that they stay, you know, anonymous. Okay, so so what you do is like, so when they do the interview, when you're doing the interview, you give me one moment here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, apologies, I just had to do that really quick. Man, what was I saying? Okay, so yeah, so you give the interview, right? And you're going to record it. You always want to record it. Some like to take notes, but the problem is interviews. There's an art to interviewing, and the thing is, if people feel like you're not paying attention to them, then they're not going to like. They feel more like structured. What's the word? They feel like it's too formal, and so they won't like feel comfortable to say whatever they want. So yeah, you want to avoid taking notes, because you can't have a good conversation. They won't feel comfortable. They won't be as honest as you want them to be. So you just record it. And so what you do is you go back, and it's a lot of work. Not nearly as bad as it sounds though. Because I mean, your interview doesn't have to be like an hour. Like the Coursera course I recommend, like they're like an hour and a half. I'm like, yeah, but not really. Like, to be honest, 30 minutes is usually what I have my interviews are about 30 minutes long. I let them be as long as they need to be, but generally they always end up being like around 30 minutes. Because also too, if it's taking too long, then they're going to get tired and they're not going to want to talk to me anymore, right? So, and if they don't want to talk to me, there's no point in doing this. So, you know, it's complete, like, your needs will be completely determine how long the interviews are going to be. But I mean, like, 20 minutes is even fine. You know, it's all about what you're trying to accomplish. So, so it may sound like a lot, like, oh man, I just interviewed 5 people for, you know, 5 people I go through their interviews. A 30-minute interview, it's like, don't worry, there's really not like it. All you do is listen, and you're just writing stuff down, right? So it's not nearly as bad as it sounds. And trust me, when you're doing this for your own project, you'll be like, oh, this is good stuff. Oh, this is good stuff. Because you're getting answered questions. You're getting answers to the questions that you desperately need to know, right? So you're hyped about this. So so let's give it. So like I said, so Blue Sticky Note are inexperienced users. I'm going to set this to 15 minutes. So Blue Sticky Note is in our inexperienced user. Our average users are green, and our super user is red. So let's say, and this is where the absolute magic of UX research comes in. And this is why I love it so friggin' much, right? So let's say this person said in the interview, oh my goodness. Let me think here. So our project is an app to watch anime. If anybody watches anime, what's like a thing that you really enjoy about watching anime? Feel free to throw out, whatever ideas. Like, let's just make up stuff that they're saying. Yeah, just drop them in chat, and we'll make a sticky note for them. Meantime, I think there's a little delay with the chat, so I mean, I'll start, but yeah, just throw out ideas, whatever people are saying. Let's say, let me see here. No, I don't need you. Sorry, little square. So let's say this person's like, oh, I like subtitle. Oh my God. Wish they had subtitles. Yeah, very good. So Okay, let me see. Okay, so there we go. Let's say this person said, yeah, I like anime, how it's different from cartoons. Generally, people will get the idea what we're talking about, right? Yeah, thank you, Julian. Let's see. Amanda said, like watching a series and skipping. Oh, there we go. Now that, that I can relate to, right? I can relate to that a ton. You know, and then let's say that right. So, okay, so let's say that these are, so we start writing down like everything they've said, right? And, you know, we just, eventually we'll have tons of sticky notes, you know, for what they've said, you know, not necessarily ton, but also people repeat themselves a lot. So, I mean, you know, if they say, oh, I hate filler like a billion times, you only need one sticky note for this person. Okay. So yeah, it's really not bad at all. You know, re-listening to a 30-minute interview, you know, it's really not that bad at all. Okay, so let's say that they, you know, this is the stuff that they said. So what we'll then do is there's several different methods. There's different techniques and tools that you can use to like kind of like, I can't remember what the word is, what the actual like word is, that like the step of it. Something the data. I can't remember. But it's where, you know, you make the data make sense, I guess, right? So what I would do is, you know, based on what they're saying, let me see. Isn't there, I could have sworn there's a way to do an outline, isn't there? Like not having like a, oh, see, I'm stupid. Yeah. Sorry guys. I can be a real, yeah. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've used Figma, because use XD and oh my god, it kills me. Okay, so what I would do then is, you know, based on what they're saying, I'll start to see like they're going to mention certain things, and so this is what's called affinity mapping or affinity diagramming. And like I said, there's different types of maps or techniques and stuff. So I mean, you use which one like makes sense to you. But I love affinity mapping because it's just so simple and really, really great for, especially if you're starting from scratch, right? And so what it is where you try to like, you talk to, you know, you collect everything they said and you try to find what they're saying in common. And so, you know, so it's affinity map. So this would be stuff for like, you know, stuff they said pertaining to the workflow. This is stuff they said pertaining to, you know, comments they made pertaining to design. You know, there'll be a box for just like miscellaneous stuff, right? And I might even like separate this even more to say like, you know, things they liked, things they dislike, things they want, right? To like sort it even more. Right? It'll kind of make sense to you when you start doing it, right? And so what we do is we just start, you know, start sorting, right? I watch with subtitles a lot, right? That's like a workflow. Okay, so they like subtitles. Okay, oh, they like subtitles. Okay, this person likes subtitles. Wish we had subtitles. Okay, they would like to have subtitles. Subtitles would be awesome, so that means they want to have subtitles. Man, I wish they had subtitles. Okay, that's, you know, also a want, right? One Piece, you know, not much filler, at least it's not bad, right? Okay, it's like, okay, that doesn't pertain to workflow or design, but okay, that's miscellaneous, it's a thought, right? I like anime, how different from cartoons. Okay, so that's That's not pertaining to the app directly, but that's something they said. That's important, you know, and you'll see why stuff like that can be like absolute gold. I wish I could skip the filler. Okay, so you know they want to skip filler. I hate filler. Okay, they dislike you know, filler. Or no, to be honest, they didn't say anything about the app. They just, you know, do too much filler, right? And so when we start categorizing and start seeing, we start to see patterns, right? You're like, okay, so let me look at this here. Okay, so these people, they like subtitles. Okay, so that's good. So when it comes to my workflow and my design, okay, subtitles are important to people. Let me look at, oh, you know what? There are more comments about wanting subtitles, and oh, I wish they had subtitles. Okay, awesome. And you know what? Someone made a comment over here. Did they? No, they did not. I'm just making that up. Oh, subtitles would be awesome, right? And so you start to collect this stuff, right? And you start grouping it together. And if you get like 5 people saying the same thing, right? And especially if they're on different sides of the spectrum, then you know this right here is a must. You do this and you'll succeed, right? Same over here. I wish I could skip filler. Okay, so they want to skip filler. Okay, so in my want category, okay, want to skip filler. Let me look at my list. Oh, you know what? They mentioned something about filler. They would probably want to skip filler, right? You see. Oh, they hate filler. Oh, you know what? They probably want to. Oh, you know what? I bet even though they didn't directly say, "Hey, I wish the app could skip filler," they're talking about how much they hate filler. So you know what? We need to do this. We need to have some kind of feature that can skip filler. If we do that, they all said this. If, you know, and this person, maybe they didn't say it, but maybe they would have, you know, and maybe it just didn't come to mind, right? The point is, you're finding all the stuff that is important to your audience, to your future customers, right? And like we said, we did the work. We did the screening survey to where we got a nice spread, right? This person will tell us what we need to attract new customers. This tells us how to appeal to our larger customer base and keep them. And this person tells us what we need to do to, like, for advanced users that are huge fans, what we need to do to make them happy, right? If you're able, primarily we want to cover this, but if you can cover this, man, dude, you're killing it, right? So this is the point of affinity mapping. It's where we take all these insights and we cross-reference and we find out what's important to them. Now, like I said, this is absolute magic, and here's why. These people here, right, have never met each other before, right? Presumably, right? They've never met each other before. They don't know each other. They could be from different parts of the country, could be different parts of the world, right? Different walks of life, right? They have different jobs. There's nothing connecting these people. And yet these random, quote unquote, random people are saying the same thing. There you go, man. If you do this, you will succeed. And so, and then same, you know, let's say that, and that's the point, right? We did our due diligence, right? We did the work from the beginning, and that means anything that pops out of this group is absolute treasure. If you do this, there you go. There's your key to success. Bam. So what does this tell you? All right, you need to design a feature in your app for watching subtitles if you want, you know, if you want to succeed. You can't get much easier than that, right? If you didn't do this research, what you would do is you would design an app, and then you put it out in the App Store, and then hopefully someone would say something at some point, right? And then you'd find out that way. Why not find out right from the beginning? Why not kick butt, like from the moment the gate opens, right? So that's what we do. And like I said, and that's the magic, is that these people have never met each other before, and yet they're all saying the exact same thing. And that's the beauty of UX research, right? Same with this one. They hate filler. Oh man, if we could have a feature that allows you to skip filler, which I'm pretty sure, I think there's a lot of anime things that do that now. A lot of anime websites that do that now. Oh man, since they all said this, That's an absolute must. That's an absolute essential feature we need to do. Now let's say that it's waving. So let's say that this guy here, he's an advanced feature user. Let's say something crazy like export the transcript of the subtitles, right? Let's say the super user said, something like this, right? But nobody else said it. Did I group these together? I did not. I don't know why I didn't. Oh, that's right. That's good. Right? So let's say that this guy is the only one. He's a super user, and he said, export a transcript of the subtitles, right? That tells you that, that might be a good idea, but it's not important because they didn't all mention it. Now, like I said, it might be good, or it could be a bad idea, because sometimes people just kind of spout out bad ideas, which is perfectly fine. So thinking about this, you might go back and do a little more research, skip intro and outro button. Yeah, I imagine they would all say that too, right? The point is, when you find your user saying the same thing, that's something you need to do. If they, and anything, and let's say, there's maybe just a couple of them that say something, right? Then it's like, okay, that's also important, but not as like important as these things, right? And like we said, depending on the group that they're in, the value of it, changes, right? So this person is, like I said, this person is inexperienced. So say they're like, they're an inexperienced user, right? They're a new customer. And so if they say, I'm intimidated by a large list of anime, right? And maybe they're the only person that said that. This is coming from the inexperienced user. So it's like, well, this is what new customers, may need, if they're going to feel comfortable, like, becoming a customer, right? So, and then anything this group says, like, you definitely want to do it because that's your biggest customer base. Like, those are your pretty much they're going to become immediate customers. So that's the point. We collect their insights, we cross-reference, we find what they have in common. Anything that's in common, especially the majority of them, that's an absolute must. That's an absolute must feature. And then you kind of just scale it from there. So that's the process of the user research plan. Technically, this is the user research plan. Do the screen survey to sort them. We do the interview, and then we collect their information. Anybody who came in late, no worries. Like, this is going to be posted on the YouTube channel, so you can watch it again. It'll be posted if you're watching on Twitch, it'll be on the Twitch channel as well, so you can watch it there. So that way you don't miss anything. All right, so we collected all our stuff here, right? Man, it took longer than I thought it would. Got about 15 minutes left. Apologies, guys. Let me see here. I'm trying to think. Give me 1 second here. Because I got user testing I got to do today, and I'm just trying to make sure. Okay. I just can't be late for that. I'm fine. All right, so we collect everything together, right? And then we just, based on that, we start designing features, right? So if we, if a bunch of people said, what, I need a thing for subtitles, and it's like, okay, cool. Then if this wasn't, in the design before, then we're like, okay, let's take the design idea that we had, and let's start creating a section, where subtitles show up. They said, like, I hate filler, right? I absolutely hate filler. Okay, so then, then that means for our nav bar, or our home screen, maybe having a thing where there's labels that identify which episodes are filler. Start the timer again. 15 minutes. Let me see here. So, okay, that's really important to them. So, and we need some type of feature related to filler. Okay, how about a label that, shows you, what's filler, so people know, right away what's filler. Okay, that works well. And then maybe, for people that just, it's like, okay, well, also, is there a way to like add a feature for filler as as regards to the screen where you're watching, the anime? Yeah. So maybe having a filler, thing here, or maybe having like a prompt that says, what, this episode is identified as filler. Would you like to watch it, or do you want to skip it? Right. Or maybe it's just a label up here. All very good questions, right? So that's the point, is we take the user insight that we got and we start designing based on that, right? And so, we start, so then what we do is we start creating, different mock-ups and different possibilities for how it can go. All right, so let me see here. And this is super ugly. I apologize because we don't have a whole lot more time left. So let's, okay, so this is an idea. We can, we have two ideas for how we can, introduce this filler idea, right? There's a couple different ways that we can go about it. So like, might think, okay, well, we could just have a filler thing up here. It's like, or we can have a prompt. And it's like, okay, or maybe even both, So then in that case, you would create, 3 versions of it, right? And so, it would look, decently, it would look, better than this. Just imagine that it looks, better. And so let's say that, like I said, you have three possible versions, and you're like, man, I wonder which one would be good, right? And so you create your mock-ups, right? And then you start going into user testing, okay? And so so user testing is where you put it in front of your users. If you can use the same users that you had interviewed previously, that would be fantastic, right? Because you already have their information. Also helps that they might also kind of be in the same mindset for it, so that can be extremely helpful. It's not, you don't necessarily have to, but again, you want to make sure that there's somebody that's on this spectrum. Like, they gotta be like an anime watcher. They have to be a mobile phone user. Otherwise, like I said, there could be some bias or their inexperience. Their inexperience will lead you to like the wrong conclusions, right? So you don't have to use the same people, but it helps because you already know that they're good users to test with, and you also already know on what side of the spectrum they're at. So so what you would do is, let me think here. So how detailed you want to get with it is completely up to you. So there are, for mockups, there is what's called low fidelity and high fidelity. And it kind of works with the principle I mentioned at the very beginning, that you don't want to become married or too attached to a design that you don't want to change it. You want to continue to have an open mind. So if they tell you they hate something, you need to be in the mindset that you can change it, right? You don't want to become, dogmatic about your design. Now, if it's like this is also a good point of the project where, if you have a team of programmers that you work with and devs, this is part of the project where, for that, I share what I found from the user research with my programmers and my devs, and I tell them, all right, so we need some type of feature when it comes to filler, right? And then I talk to them about what's possible. If this is a personal project, you just do your thing. But I'm just saying, like, for work experience, like, expect this. When you work for a company, you don't have unlimited resources, and your devs aren't, like, all-knowing, and there's some tools that they work better with than others. So you do want to talk with them and ask them, okay, what's possible? How can we make this happen? And you just stress, like, dude, like, all 5 of them said that they want to skip filler. We got to do this, And so you find out what is possible for them to do, right? And then you design based on that, and then you go into user testing. Problem is, if you design something that they can't do and you go into user testing, you've wasted that time, right? And now, so yeah. So there's a good time to collaborate with them and to get with them and to, talk about that. So, so you would, like I said, unfortunately, I don't have time to make this pretty. We'll do one where we make it pretty. We'll do a live stream we spend a little more time on the project to make it prettier. So you would have, these three versions, like, okay, which one of these works best? And you would, it's kind of up to you. You would kind of know like what you're looking to answer, what kind of answers you're looking for. But you would create a prototype. Like I said, there's low fidelity and high fidelity depending on how much detail. You don't want it to be so low fidelity that they have like you would not want it to be this, because it's like, because they're gonna be like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Like, so you want it to be pretty good, It's gotta look pretty. It's gotta look pretty realistic. Otherwise, it throws them off, when you're doing testing. So, don't go super crazy, but like, at least get the things that you need answers on. At least get those things looking good. So you'd have these three different versions, and so this is where you would have another script that you would ask, and it's going to be very, very similar to your interview script before. When we were doing research, get rid of this, and pretty much. These questions right here, pretty much, right? Cool. And so, again, I'm just freestyling. There's probably more things I might ask, or different things I might ask, but generally, here you go. That's what you'd ask. So you have them try out each one. You create a prototype so that they can mess around with it. Pro tip, for doing user tests, what you do is, so you get like, so of course like, let me see. So I'm turning on the prototype mode here, right? So, you can create prototype mode on here, right? Obviously, you're like, well, how do I, get it to them, right? So one option is to have them open it up on their phone, and then you watch them do it. That's like the best thing you can do. But the second best is you create this prototype, right? And then you put on your screen and you do a Zoom call or like a Teams call with them, right? And then you share your screen so it's on the screen, and then you give control over to them of the screen. And then right there, they can like mess with it, right? Now, of course, it's if it's a mobile app, for example, it's like, yeah, it's not a one-to-one experience. Like they obviously can't like scroll with their finger or anything like that. But that might be fine. That might be perfectly fine. That you don't necessarily, that you're just trying to get the main idea down. Like, right, you're just trying to get some general feedback, right? And so that's something you could do. Because like for my job, I like everybody is like remote. So that's the only way that I can really do it. Once in a while we go into the office and like, that's where I will put the app onto my phone and have a mess with it. But, I don't get many opportunities to do that. So doing it via Zoom or Teams works perfectly fine. And to be honest, it's gotten really great results. So you'd have them try each one, right? And then you would ask them, okay, so tell me about the process and workflow. Okay, tell me about the design. Tell me about the home screen. Tell me about the controls and buttons. Tell me about the features. Tell me flaws and strength. And again, just using tell me about statements. So they're gonna be completely honest. So they'll just be completely honest and unbiased, right? And what you do is you do exactly what we did over here. You collect their insights, right? And then you find out like what people are saying. So let's say, for example, that I'm like, okay, try out this one, and they're like, you know, they might be like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's oh, that's cool. It tells me that's filler. Oh, awesome. Then I know I can skip it, right? And so they're like, yeah, that, and, you know, like, you know, so, you know, tell me about the design of the video player. Oh, video player looks good. I like the controls. You know, how would you improve it? They may say, no, I think it's good. It works good. I really love that, you know, that filler label up there. That helpful. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Let me share you the second one here. Okay, and they're like, what is this prompt? It says, oh, there's a prompt that, oh, it lets me know it's filler and I can skip it? Yeah. Oh, now that's awesome. That's really cool. I really like that. I'm like, okay, you know, and they just say it completely unprompted, right? And just ask them, okay, you think that's, you know, useful? Oh, absolutely. That's awesome. That's useful, you know? You're like, okay, cool. And you know, and then that's something else I'll ask too. For testing at the end, I'll ask, you know, I'll tell them like, you know what, lack of a better term, like pick your favorite. Like, which one do you find the most useful to you? You know, and they tell you, right? You know, again, now that's opinionated, but again, we're asking that question very, very last. And to be honest with you, it's a very good question that needs asking, right? It just makes it very, very clear to you, right? Because if they all pick the same one, it's like you're good to go, right? You know, and then, you know, let's say you show them the third one, they're like, okay, oh, so this one has a label up here and it has here. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. They may say, oh, like, yeah, that's really good. You know what, that's, you know, I like it because, you know what happens if I, you know, completely miss this prompt, and I'd still like to know. So yeah, and they'll just say it out loud, you know, without you even asking them. Like, yeah, I like this one. I definitely like this one better than the second. You know, the first one is good, but I really love this third one. Don't even need to ask them; they will just say it, right? You know, and if, you know, you ask them like, how would you improve it? They might be like, you know what? I think the subtitles need to be a little bit bigger. You know, that would be really helpful to me. And again, if they all say, oh yeah, the subtitles need to be a little bit bigger, then there you go. You know that's something you're going to do, right? And so you're like, okay, so then we create another version of these, right? Where you're like, okay, cool. So you take their feedback and you're like, okay, they said that you know, they all said that they like, you know, either this one or this one. Let's say that like some said, oh, I like this one better, or I like this one better, right? It's like, okay, that's fine. You know, we'll continue moving forward with this. If they said this was their least, then there's no point in continuing with it, right? It's fine. You can move on without it. You know, you make the changes to the subtitles to make them bigger, or, you know, whatever they said, right? And then you go back and you retest it. Getting all these phone calls now, you know, and you retest it, right? And then you just do that over and over again until like they say like, man, this is perfect, right? And that's it. You're done, at least for like that stage, you know. And so that's the whole idea behind it is, yeah, I mean, yeah. And then I'm amazed that like, yeah, we're actually at the end of the process now, aren't we? Yeah, that's kind of it. It's really simple. And then when you find like the final version, assuming your devs and programmers are cool with it, and that's the other thing too, like, you know, if any new ideas come, like, you know, this whole subtitle thing, if they say the subtitles are too small, you'd bring that to the devs, like, and make sure it's actually possible for you to do before you like start promising things, right? Yeah, and then you just like, okay, this is our perfect version. Let's go forward with it. So again, to summarize why, you know, UX design is done this way is because, you know, to demonstrate. And I actually did a presentation at my job to share, like, because like I said, at my company, they were not really keen on the idea of user testing. And I think it's because they had the wrong idea of what it actually was. And I shared this chart with them on why it needs to be done this way. Yeah, just bear with me 1 second. To be honest with you, design is not even that long of a process, usually. I don't like that red. Here we go. So if design is that long, then programming is like this long. Just to kind of summarize, the point of everything we talked about. Sorry, I know some of these colors are. I'll give them green. And we'll have I'll have a Q&A at the end of this. So if anyone, so if you guys have any questions, actually feel free right now. If you have any questions, because I know there's a delay in chat, go ahead and drop the questions into chat, and we'll do a Q&A. We'll talk for a little bit. Sorry, someone's calling me about something. Right, and so usually, okay, then you do like a launch. Like that's where you put the thing out there. Okay, so this is usually how the process goes. And if for some strange reason there's like a business owner watching, this is important for you to know too. This is why you need to have a UX designer, on your staff in your workflow. So usually, if I group this together, so usually this is how it works in the business world. Making apps, right? So usually people come up with an idea for an app, right? Then you have a designer who designs the thing, right? Takes some time. They hand it off to the programmers, right? And then they take this, it takes a long time to program, right? And then they launch it, right? On the App Store or whatever. And then they start getting, reviews and user feedback, right? People say what they like, people tell them what they hate, right? And then so usually what happens is like, they launch like, okay, they get user feedback, and then they have to I don't know how to make arrows. How do I make this big? Okay. But here's the problem. So what that means, though, is after you get that user feedback, then you have to go all the way back to the design step, right? The designer goes back through, and then you start the process all over again, right? Which means you have to do all of this all over again, right? And it's going to take like 6 or 7 tries to get it right. When you do things with user research, instead of putting the user feedback at the end, you put it towards the beginning. And so when you get user feedback, you always got to go back to the design step, right? But look how short that is. Look at how much time is not wasted, That's the power of, UX design and user research. There's no downside to it. It makes it easier on everybody. You waste less money. You make more money. You make less mistakes, right? And you get it right, or at least you get it as right as possible on the first try, rather than the 5th, 6th, or 7th try. So that's the point of it. So that's the idea, like of what we're doing as UX designers. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk there. Yeah, I'm just like on a high because I had to do a presentation to convince my company to allow me to do user testing. And I thought they were going to like hate my presentation when I shared them this, but they actually liked it and it made sense. So thank goodness it made sense. Okay, so So that's pretty much it. So I know I got really detailed on the first part of the process. Love that. I'm glad, Amanda. I'm glad. Yeah, and that's and that's also a really good answer to interview question. When I was interviewed, I was asked, why is why do you think user experience design is so important? And this is more or less what I told them, right? And again, this experience, this mindset I have comes from me going through the entire with all my personal projects, going through the entire process. This becomes very clear to me, and so this is my answer. And I guess they really liked my answer. And that's what landed me. I assume, is what landed me the job, was primarily that answer. So that's so. If anyone, like I said, if anyone has any questions, I can spend probably like 15 minutes answering questions. I got to get ready for some user testing I got to do. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. So the workshop today. So I know I went really specific on the first part of the process, and then for the last part, I apologize. I did not maybe I talk way too much. I need to chill, I guess. And so for the last part of the project, when it came to the actual design points, that's where I kind of whatchamacallit, I kind of rushed through that. I'll do another workshop, and we'll go through the design process more. In fact, what we'll do is we'll continue this project. I think that would probably be good. We'll continue this project, and we'll focus specifically on design. Okay, so that we can get a good detailed view of the entire process. So, this is mostly the UX stuff, but I mean, there's a design side of it too. And I know that can be intimidating for a lot of people. It's kind of one of those things, of course you're like, well, how do I know how big this needs to be? How do I know how big this needs to be, kind of stuff. That's very intimidating. What I'll say is that once you kind of just start doing it, you'll start Googling certain things, and you'll eventually find the articles you need to find, and then it becomes kind of sort of second nature to you. But I completely understand that it's intimidating. So I'll do another workshop, and we'll hit this project again, but I'll focus specifically on doing some high fidelity wireframes, so that, and then so that we can so I can kind of share with you guys about that. Let me see. So is there a client generator we can use online for a portfolio? So I'm trying to think. Let me see here. So there's a thing for I can't remember what it's called. There are I can't remember what it's called. Fake client. Oh, design brief generator. Yeah. So there's fake clients, good brief, stuff like that you can use. So I personally, in fact, let me set my timer. I gotta keep myself in check here. I'll do 15 minutes of a Q&A. So I personally didn't use those, just because. So I know there's I know it's I know it's a struggle to when you're starting something new. I know it's a struggle to keep up with it, especially a portfolio. And so what I Yeah, especially if you're not experienced with it. It's really tough to keep it going. So what I recommend to people is choose like a project that you're passionate about, something that you would love to do. So like me, I did a electric vehicle app, right? Because I was like all about electric vehicle. I still am. I'm very excited about electric vehicles. So I did that, right? And I did one for like a smart mirror because I always wanted to design one of those kind of thing, right? And so the thing is that it helped me to not procrastinate because I really enjoyed doing it. And ultimately, it also meant that I put more effort into it than I probably was necessary. So, it's perfectly fine. Like, whatever works for you. I found, like, for me personally, especially I have ADHD, so it's tough sometimes. I have trouble getting motivated. I just chose projects that I knew I would really like to enjoy doing. And so that helped me to stay on it, right? And to not procrastinate as much. I definitely procrastinated, but it helped me to not procrastinate because I was super excited to do it all the time. But if I had a random client generator, it was a project that I didn't really care about, that I just there's a better chance that I wouldn't be super excited about it. Zwad, why did you skip secondary research? Let me see. Can you, Zwad, can you define secondary research for me? Like, what was the secondary research? Let me think here. Yeah, Zod, if you can, because I think I might, because I think I have a different word for it, and I'm just trying to know exactly which one you're talking about, which research step. Do me a favor, clarify for me so I can answer your question. Amanda, I appreciate the quality over quantity. There were a lot of great insights, and yes, would love to see continuation. Awesome, man. So there must be a massive delay in this chat then. My goodness. Huh. I'm gonna see if I can. There must be a huge delay, so I'm gonna see if I can do something about that. Because I'm wondering, like, if this timer may not even be fair to you. If there's so, I mean, I don't know how it works. I'm kind of new to this stuff, but I'm gonna look into removing like a chat delay. It's bad UX, we need good UX here. But yeah, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, these are all like video ideas that I have, but it's just, man, it's so hard to pull the camera out. And like I said, the office is so little, so I have to move a ton of stuff around. And it's just and then too, everybody's kind of got to be out of the house. My dog has to not be barking, so it's a huge hassle to get it going. And so this was just, I was like, man, there's so many things that I want to tell you guys, and there's so much I want to share to help people, and I'm like, oh, videos is just taking too long, and especially my job, it just got really busy, so it's hard for me to find time to pull stuff out, but I'm doing it today. Today is my day. I have a day off today. As you probably know, I'm still doing user testing because I forgot today was a day off for me. But really important project, so I'm still doing user testing. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can continue doing this. The biggest problem is that usually at this time I would be working. Okay. I just really, yeah, I just worry. I don't want to rob you guys of time. But okay, yeah, Z Quad. If you could define for me secondary research, what? Because if I did miss something, I want to explain why I missed it, or why I skipped it. But okay, but yeah, man, I'm gonna. The problem is this was the time that most people surveyed and polled and said that this was the best time for them to watch. The problem is I'm usually working around this time. I'm already in the middle of my work day, and I can't stream during work. So it's yeah, I want to figure something out because it seems like this is really good, especially because everyone can ask questions, So yeah, so I'm gonna try. I also have Monday off. no. So yeah, I also have Monday off, but I have to ask my wife. She also has Monday off, so I got to ask her if it would be cool with her for me to do a stream. She might have plans for us to like get breakfast or something, or if she wants to sleep in, then it'll be perfectly fine. So I'll drop a message. Surveys done by others. Oh, so survey, like, so are you talking, so Z Quad, are you talking about, okay, so these are the first surveys. Oh, the second survey. Oh, yes. So just to make sure it's fine, you can ignore the timer. I'm gonna answer your questions, guys. So just to clarify, Z Quad, so we have a screener survey. And are you talking about the survey that usually that there's another survey that comes after the screener? Is that what you're referring to? So just clarify for me if that's what you're referring to exactly, and I'll explain. But yeah, man. So I'm thinking about streaming on Monday if my wife is cool with it. Like, we don't have any plans or anything. I'll drop a message onto the YouTube channel today. I'm gonna after I get off here, I'm gonna text her and ask her if it's cool with her, and so I'll let you guys know. But I would love to do this on a regular basis. Let me see here. Stephanie, do you recommend recreating other people's UI design? You know what? Let me switch over to this cam here. In fact, yeah, this makes it look like I'm actually talking to y'all when I look here. Do you recommend recreating other people's UI design to master UI? That can be real. Yeah. So if you're trying to get used to the tools, yeah, if you're trying to get get used to Figma's tools and stuff like that, that's a very good way. That's a very good way to get used to the software itself. Like, for example, one of my best friends, I'm teaching him UI UX design. And so to get him comfortable with Figma, I told him, choose an app that you really enjoy. And it was some app. And I said, okay, recreate it in Figma. Just recreate it in Figma. As deep or as whatever you want to go, just recreate it, right? It's a really good exercise for that. If you're talking about mastering like UI in terms of like design principles, it can be. Yeah, it can be, or it could not be. How do I put this? You know what? Let me share. And this is something I'll go into more detail on the next stream. Let me share this with you. Ugh, that's not a very good example. It's fine. So I'll say, from looking at, you'll eventually get to a point where you start to notice certain like design principles, right? And you'll start to see certain commonalities, and so that's when it will get easier, right? So that's always fun, is when you finally understand the subject well enough that you start to spot things. That's really, really exciting. But also, so I apologize. This is actually for a project I'm working on for a local business. I'm helping them with some UX research because they're pretty cool people. So it can be, but there's also, for example, for iPhone, there are certain like parts of the phone and like certain rules that have to be followed. Oh, yeah. Just just ignore the timer. Okay, Z Quad. I'm gonna get to your question in a second. So, for example, iPhone has always at the top there's a status bar, and it's 47 pixel. Well, it depends on what model of phone it is, but 47 pixels high. I thought it was 44. My numbers could be wrong here. right? So there's always it's called status bar at the top, and then there's a usually there's another bar below it. Okay, I guess this is 47, and then so there's what's called the nav bar 1, which is 44 pixels, right? And that's where you typically would see like the back button, and there would be a title of the page, and and then your other buttons here. Like these are like things for controlling the page. And then sometimes there's a nav bar 2, which has a title that corresponds to this title. Like they wouldn't be shown at the same time, and also is a certain font size. If you have if you have a search bar, then that will usually be contained in nav bar number 3. So and then you have stuff down here. So my point is that so like Android and iPhone, they have certain rules that they'd like you to follow so that it's compatible with their phones and everything. Now, with that said, you don't have to follow their rules. Now, the status bar, you have no choice, and I think the home indicator, you don't have much of a choice. But some apps can ignore like all the other rules here. Like this stuff here, you can kind of, and even this one, you can kind of ignore that stuff, right? So you kind of have like free reign. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is it also depends on how well you want it to work with the OS that you're designing for. Like how well do you want it to integrate with that? Your devs and programmers would be able to tell you, help you with that decision. But also that way too, that there is no right or wrong way to do things necessarily. And so you just need to keep that in mind. If you're recreating other people's designs to master UI, like to learn, like to get used to like design itself, like working in Figma and just like creating stuff, yes, absolutely good. If it's it's even good for like understanding some design principles and and some common patterns. Yes, it can be good for that too. But in terms of like saying like I'm going to recreate Netflix because I know that UI is great, it's like no, not necessarily. Signy, good question. I'll answer your question in a second, Signy's. So that's the thing I want you to keep in mind. Like, just because Netflix is like successful doesn't mean that they have good UI UX. Now, obviously, if it was terrible, they wouldn't have as many customers. But there are plenty of things that Netflix does wrong. So the idea is like, and that's why we do the user research and stuff. Is if we were to just copy an app to watch anime based off Netflix, we might do things right the way that we might, do the right things, but we also would do their bad things. And we want to do their good things, but not their bad things. So that's why you do this research. So mastering UI, recreating can be useful. Just keep in mind that if you design based on their design, you're also going to do things incorrectly. Now, what could be a fun thing to do is you see it all the time where people are like, oh, I redid Instagram's design, and it's like, that's cool. That's like a really cool idea. But would be even better is if you did UX research and then redesign their thing based on that. Like that's what you really want to do. So yes, it can be helpful. Just keep in mind, it's no substitute for doing UX research. Z-Quad. So secondary research involves gathering and analyzing existing information and data from various sources to understand Oh, okay. So I apologize, Z-Quad. So by secondary research, do you mean like... Oh, various sources. Gotcha. So, yeah, so I would say... So to give an example, I hope I'm giving a good example here, Z-Quad. I really hope I'm giving like a good example of what you're talking about. So like, for example... let's say that This is a really good one. In fact, this article helped us on one of our very difficult designs at my company. This article is what helped us, right? So I hope this is what you're talking about, Z-Quad. So obviously we did the user research, right? We got user research from our users. This is this is just to tell you what they want and give you an idea of the features and things that they want, and that's it. Like, you obviously you as the designer will decide how you're going to approach it, right? So like we said in our fake user research, they said, man, I wish I want subtitles, right? That's all we gathered from it. That's the other thing. We don't want them to tell us how it's going to be designed. That's our job. But we want to know what they want. So they said, we need subtitles, right? So then it's up to us to decide how we're going to design the subtitles, and then we do the mock-ups to find out if it's working or not. So Z-Quad, I really hope I hope I'm so what I would do though is, obviously from this I gather, okay, they need subtitles. How should I do that? How should I design it? Well, that's where you can start accessing articles like from Nielsen Norman Group, or honestly just Googling. And because, like, for example, Nielsen Norman Group, they gather information from tons and tons of people to find what seems to work best for the general users, right? So, for example, accordions on mobile, this thing where you click and stuff, right? This article is amazing. It completely changed our product. Oh my goodness, it was amazing. It helped us so much. It tells you, it kind of like, for example, accordions on mobile, there's like more or less giving you some do's and don'ts, or at least I won't say do's and don'ts, I'll say guidelines, right? Based on their research, right? So that if you're like, we think we're going to design it this way with an accordion, and it'll be like, okay, well, here's some things that you want to keep in mind, right? So absolutely, this is something. Yeah, I apologize. I think I skipped over it, Z-Quad. I skipped it for the sake of time, but I would say usually around, to be honest, you can kind of do it however you want, right? Like we said in the very beginning, you'll have like app ideas, right? You'll always have some kind of app idea and some quick sketches that you did, right? And you do that before you did any research. Then you start doing your research, right? You can kind of like, and then you can kind of start doing that kind of whenever you like. But especially when you start getting to this stage here where you're like, okay, we're going to start like designing stuff. That's especially where, okay, you want to start looking at other sources and understand like how they generally, like what generally works, right? And keeping those things in mind. Like, for example, I'm sorry, I'm not going to ramble anymore. I hope you get the idea. But yeah, I apologize. Z-Quad is correct. I did skip that. I think it just didn't come into my head. I think I was already in like rush mode. But yeah, you would absolutely want to do research from, organizations like this on what's the best way to go about doing it. Now, does that mean that they're going to tell you the right and wrong way to do it? There is no right or wrong way to do it. The ones that will tell you if it's the right or wrong way are your users. And so instead, you would follow the advice of those organizations. You would, design based on that, your prototypes, and then you would test them. And if they have a problem with it, then you would change it. Even if it goes against what the organization's research is, you keep in mind your users are your users. They're not everybody, and you're not designing for everybody. You're designing for your niche. But yes, you would absolutely start your design process with doing research like this, so that you can you get closer on the mark. But yeah, absolutely. One thing I will say that's extremely important. You must. In fact, it was for this very kind of article. make sure you look up multiple sources. Make sure you look first off at credible sources. Nielsen Norman Group is a really good one. There are others. I can't think of any right now. Be wary. Like, I'm not saying that they're not credible, but be wary of like blog posts, because sometime the thing about Nielsen Norman Group is they do tons of research, right? They don't just post their opinions. They're like, here's the research we did and here's what we found. But some blog posts will kind of just go on their opinion, or they did research, but it was very tilted, or they didn't like poll enough people. So, like, to give an example, for the app, we were doing some accordions, right? And our question was, like, what icons should we use? Like, what icons do they, seem to be better, for people to understand? There is an article on here about that. I don't know where exactly it is. But there's an very specific. It's not this one either. Oh no, is it this? No, it's not. But there's a very specific article in Nielsen Norman Group about it, right? And they did studies like very, very specific. Like, these are the icons that people saw immediately and they knew it was good. I found a blog post that completely said the opposite. And he was like saying you need to use like plus and minus. And I looked up another article. I was like, okay. And another article, like another organization, pretty much mirrored what Nielsen Norman Group said. So the blog post, like I said, ultimately you got to do your own testing to know what works for sure for you. But be wary of blog posts, because sometimes they're not doing enough research. Not saying that some blog posts are not credible, just be careful. And ultimately, you put it into testing to know for sure. That's the only way you can know for sure. Because by this definition, even big organizations like Nielsen Norman Group can be wrong. And they're not wrong. It's just that your users want something particular. So I hope that covered it, Z-Quad. But yes, I did skip it, and I think I just forgot about that. But the next live stream I'm going to focus on the design process, much more. Zignees, I'm sorry, I'm just now getting to your question. I'm curious, why are you using both Sketch for your UX and Figma for your UI? Let me see, Sketch for your UX and Figma for you. So this is so this is actually Figma. This is FigJam. If you're talking about Sketch, the app itself, I've actually never used it, but this is still Figma. This is FigJam. To be honest, I usually use Miro for like my UX research stuff. To be honest, it's just I'm just creating notes. I'm not even really doing much real user research in here, anything heavy. It's just preference, but you use what you want to use. Because I usually use Miro, and I just decide to use FigJam just for the sake of convenience, that I only need to, click on tabs. But yeah, you work what's best for you. All right, cool, guys. I apologize. I'm like 15, 20 minutes over when I needed to stop. So, thank you guys so much for, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know how new it is. How new, it's relatively new. It's definitely newer than like Miro and stuff like that. But I think they all work the same, I think. And like I said, I just use it just for convenience. I don't really notice, I have never really noticed a huge difference between them. Maybe if I started doing some heavier journey mapping and stuff like that, I might. But so far I haven't noticed a difference, so yeah. I'm glad, Julian. I saw that you've just followed me on Instagram, so I appreciate it, man. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, guys, the next live stream we'll do another UX workshop. Like I said, I focus very heavily. Absolutely, Stephanie. I'm glad this was helpful. Like I said, this one I focused a lot on the UX research part, and I kind of zoomed through the actual design part, for timing purposes. So the next live stream, we'll focus on the design part specifically. We'll talk about what we did, and we're gonna pick up from this project again, so that way we're not starting from complete zero. And so we'll actually work on like doing high fidelity wireframes. Z-Quad, thank you for pointing it out. I will talk about doing that secondary research and how you find stuff like that, right? So we'll focus on that for the next live stream. When it will be, I'm not sure. I'm hoping maybe Monday. I have Monday off, but it really depends. I got to ask my wife if she has any plans for us. So I'll let you know. As soon as I get done here, I'm going to text her and ask her. If we're regardless, the announcement for the next one, I'll put it on the YouTube channel as a post, and I'll put it on the Instagram as well. So stay tuned for that. And so otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that this was helpful. Anybody who came late, it'll be posted. It'll be on the Twitch channel. It'll be on the YouTube channel as well, so you can watch from the beginning. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for sharing your sharing whatchamacallit, your morning. Well, for me, it's morning. Thank you for sharing my morning with me, joining me on this workshop, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.